Hey y'all, it's Katie. Welcome back to From My Vanity and welcome to a little brush review video. If you don't know, Doll10 and MakeupMolly here on YouTube came out with a collaboration of brushes, and she was so sweet enough to ask Doll10 to send me them as PR, and I got them over the summer. I've been trying them out recently, but because I was sick it just took me a lot longer than normal, so this is probably old news to you. Everyone probably already has their review out by now, but I figured I would just sit down and give you guys my thoughts on each of the brushes and let you know my thoughts on the collection as a whole, the quality of the brushes. This is the first product I've ever tried from Doll10, so I don't have a lot of experience with the brand, but I do know that they're a smaller indie company, and I was really excited for Molly to be able to collaborate with them. So it was just really, really sweet to see her get to collab on these brushes, and overall I was just really impressed with the collection as a whole. So I want to just break it down and give you guys my thoughts on how each of the brush perform and then the set as a whole. So if that sounds good to you, let's just jump right into it. If my lashes look at all wonky today, I am trying out a drugstore magnetic lash liner system, and it hasn't been going well so far, so but this is about eyeshadow brushes, so we'll just ignore the lashes. Okay, so just for some information as a whole, this is Doll10 and MakeupMolly Doll Eye-ssentials Brush collection. Retails for $39 and comes with these 8 brushes and this little carrying case for it, which the brushes do fit inside, and there's plenty of room for more or just to put whatever you want inside it. It says Doll10 on it. And yeah, it's just a nice little makeup case or makeup bag, and then the brushes. Now just to give you a little perspective on like how much each of the brushes value is, which is kind of what I see it as, I did not include the makeup bag as part of this value, so $39 for 8 brushes turns out to be about $4.87, so just under $5. But Molly does have her own affiliate code, so I would definitely recommend if you want to get this brush set, use her affiliate code. I think it's 15% off, which brings this brush set down to $33.15, which if you broke that price down to each individual brush, you're paying $4.14, just over $4 per brush, which is a pretty good price for an eyeshadow brush in my opinion. So when comparing these brushes to other brands that I have, they're very similar to like Luxie and just like the weight and feel of them and kind of how they look and just how they feel in your hands, and also pretty similar to Sigma. I feel like Sigma, there's just a touch more weight to them. Not much, but just something about holding a Sigma brush feels a little bit more expensive than these. These have a very lightweight feel to them and very light on the handle and whatnot, but still they feel well made. I'm not saying that they're not well made. They definitely feel well made. I've only been using them, I should say, for about 2, maybe 3 months, so I can't really speak to the longevity of Doll10's brushes, but first impressions and washing these probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 times each at least. I've had no issues with any bristles falling out, no issues with them getting all funky when I wash them. I know some of them are stained, but that is not the brush's fault or Doll10's fault. That is the Whale Song palette's fault because it's such a pigmented palette. But yeah, overall, no issues at all with the quality of these brushes. I think they're very nice, and considering that you're breaking this down to pay just over $4 per brush, that's a pretty good deal in my opinion. Okay, so now let's break it down and go through each of the brushes. As I said, there are 8 in this collection, and we'll just kind of start. They have it listed out on their website, so I copied it down here, and we'll just start with the first brush, number 1. There are no numbers on the actual brush, but they are labeled out by name. I don't know if Molly named them or if this is something Doll10 does, but like this brush is called the Prepping Perfector. This brush is called the Detail Dazzler, so they got cute names, but also descriptive names to help you know what job the brush was intended for. So anyway, let's start with brush number 1, Line Definer, and go from there. The Line Definer, this brush is said to define smoking and smudging your upper and lower lash line. It's just a really flat type of brush, and while this isn't my least favorite brush in this collection, it's definitely towards the bottom. I would say second to the least, or second to the least favorite, however you say that, mainly because it's such a short little brush and it's such a thin, it's not sparse by any means, but it's very thin that when you actually go to use that on your lower lash lines, it's not the most comfortable. Like it feels a little sharp just because of how sharp and thin. I don't know if you can even see how thin it is, but it's a pretty sharp, thin little brush. I would imagine if you want to use this to like line your eyes, it would probably work pretty nice. But for me, using on my lower lash lines, it's not the worst one I've ever, flat little brush like this I've ever used by far. I've definitely used some that feel like I'm like scratching and making my eyelid bleed under there. But it's just one of those that when I use it, it's kind of like, not the most pleasant experience, but it gets the job done, and it definitely gives you a very tight and precise line because it comes to such like a thin point up here. it will give you a little line, and I find that typically when I would use this, it definitely is a definer, because if I wanted to get a smudged out look, I would have to go in with another brush to really diffuse it out, because there is no fluff to this or no taper to it or anything. It just really is a very precise definer brush. So not one that I absolutely love for my lower lash line, but one that I can see myself getting decent use out of and continuing to use in the future. Okay, so brush number 2 is the Detail Dazzler. They say that this is to add shimmer to the brow bone and inner corner, and inner corner is definitely where I use this. I've never really used it to add to my brow bone, but I can totally see that working very well. But this brush, because it is so tiny and precise, here, maybe against my face, it'll be better to see. It is really tiny and precise, so it's very easy for me to get in there with my inner corner highlight and just apply it around my tear duct. I feel like I've said this very frequently, but if I get too much eyeshadow in my eye, it will make my eyes water, so I like to go in with really tiny and precise brushes, and typically I have like 5 of these little e.l.f. concealer brushes, but this is something what I would use, and it's not far off. It's a little bit wider, but still very precise and just as thin, and gets the job done very nicely, and a little bit quicker than the e.l.f. brush, because the e.l.f. brush is so tiny. You know, it takes a little time to work it around there. This brush is just a tad bit bigger, but it's still very precise, so I'm able to get it around there very quick and easy and pack on that inner corner highlight, and I really, really do like this brush. I've washed this many times because it is an inner corner highlighting brush. I've washed it with my little dry brush wash, and then also, you know, just washing with soap and water and whatnot. Never had any issues, and really do enjoy this brush and can foresee myself getting a ton of use out of it. Okay, brush number 3 is a shadow shader. This is described as a building and packing shadow onto the lid type of brush. And it's this brush right here. It's the one that's stained blue from the Whale Song palette. For me personally, I don't tend to use this to pack onto the lid, but I can totally see that being a very good purpose for it. For me, I really like packing onto the outer corner, and then also just using the tip of this to apply shadow and blend it up into my crease. That's what I did with this look today. I have already washed it since then. My daughter and I had a little brush washing session this morning. But anyway, I just find it's really nice to get a very precise blend into the crease, because it comes to such a tip here. It's very pinched at the ferrule right here, but it's still tapered down the side, so it works really well to blend it up into your crease. And it really does remind me of the Sigma, what is that brush? Of course, it's going to be one of the brushes we washed today. I think it's the E25 brush. It's a very popular brush from Sigma, and this definitely reminds me of both in the length and the size of it and the quality of it and all that. It performs just the same, and I really do enjoy this brush. I've been using it a lot, reaching for it a lot, and just find it's very multi-purpose. Like I said, you can apply it all over the lid, or if you're like me, you can use it to pack on the outer corner. You can use it to put your shadow into your crease if you're wanting a very precise type of blend. Lots of different ways you can use this. You can even use it as, for me, my brow bone, because it fits there really nicely. But yeah, this is definitely one of the brushes that is a standout. It's stained because I've been using it so much over the past month with the Whale Song palette. I've been reaching for it a ton. And it's just a really good, solid brush that I feel like everyone needs to have in their collection. So I'm really glad that Molly included it in her brush collection. Brush number 4 is a Transition Transformer. This is a building and blending your transition shade into your crease. Kind of the same purpose that I would use the previous brush for, but this is just a little more of a domed type of typical blending brush that you would have, but it's a lot more pinched, short, and a little more firmly packed in there than like a huge fluffy brush. And so it, again, very easy to blend it up into my crease. I'm someone, I've always been this way. I have a variety of brushes, but by far my largest collection of eyeshadow brushes is my blending brush. I feel like you can never have too many blending brushes, so I love that she included a variety of different sizes and different types of blending brushes. And this is another solid brush that for me personally, I just find myself reaching for a lot. I like to be able to blend shadow into my crease, but still keep a lot of control, because as much as I love my Sigma E40 brush, which I think I have one right here, I really like this. It is very large and it kind of just gets shadow everywhere. I am losing my lash. 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to try to blink very carefully. I think I fixed it. Not having the best experience with this. But anyway, yeah, it's really nice for a more precise blend. So if I'm not wanting to get too messy and just like really buffed out, this is really great, especially when you're working with a lot of bright colors and you're wanting a lot of different colors in your crease. I like these tinier brushes to really get in there and blend it out. So this was fantastic. I like the amount of taper it has on the side of the brush. I like the density of it, and I like the softness of it. And yeah, overall, this is another brush I can definitely see myself getting a ton of use out of it in the future. Okay, brush number 5 is the Buff Blender, blending and smoothing harsh lines. This is another brush that, once again, very similar to the brush we just talked about, but a little bit bigger. but not as big as like the Sigma. Can I get it in frame? So like, see how the Sigma is still larger? So it's still a little bit smaller. So once again, you can get it in there and really buff out the lines, or I like to use these types of brushes. It's still pretty dense, and it just reminds me of a larger version of this brush that we just talked about, the Transition Transformer. And it's really nice at just taking those edges. If I ever feel like I have a harsh edge between where like my shadow starts and then where it's just kind of skin tone, this type of brush is really nice to just get in there and diffuse it. Or typically what I would do is, this is the type of brush I would reach for to start a transition shade in my crease, like to be the first shadow that I put down. Love the taper on it, love the density of it, no issues there. I love that it comes to a nice little point, but still there's a fluffiness to it, so it makes it really nice and effortless and easy just to get in there and buff it out. And yeah, overall, another solid blending brush. Brush number 6 is the Dimension Designer, defining and building the crease and lower lash line. This is a brush that is very similar to the previous 2 brushes. I don't know if you're someone who's just getting into makeup or you're just getting into doing your eye makeup, but you might be thinking like, my gosh, that's a lot of blending brushes. But trust me, if you're getting into it, if you enjoy eyeshadow, blending brushes are really nice to have, and I absolutely love seeing Molly put this brush collection together and seeing that it had so many blending brushes, because that's kind of always my complaint, or like my issue when it comes to buying a eye brush set, is that it always has like 1 or 2 blending brushes, and then it has that annoying kind of liner brush that's always way too thick to actually do your wing liner, or just too chunky for your brows, or it has that spoolie brush that you never use. It just has brushes that I feel like I'll never use, and I appreciate Molly putting so much time and effort into making sure that her brush collection was well-rounded and had so many various types of blending brushes. So yeah, anyway, this is the Dimension Designer. I would say this is extremely, extremely close to the Buff Blender. As you can see here, they almost look identical, but they are different. Trust me. There's a little bit more of like a fluffiness to this brush. I don't know if you can see here. I don't know, at the top it just kind of blossoms out, whereas this Buff Blender comes more to a point. Not by much, but it's definitely a little bit of a difference, and I feel like even if they're both identical brushes, you can still get good use out of these type of brushes. I like how they are smaller, once again, than the Sigma E40, so I feel like it'll work for a variety of eye shapes. If you have more hooded eyes, I feel like you'll still be able to get some good use out of it. So yeah, another brush very similar to the last, but has its little nuances and definitely has a purpose in your eye brush collection and has a purpose in this collection, in my opinion, and is definitely worth the, you know, the added $4 that you're paying per brush in this collection. So brush number 7 is the Crease Creator. It's contouring and blending shades into the crease. This one is the most like the Sigma E40 in my opinion. If you can see, they're pretty similar. I would say the only thing is that this brush is a little more cut straight across and doesn't have quite the taper to the edges as the Sigma E40 does. The Sigma E40 just has such a beautiful little taper to it. This one's a little more straight across and it just doesn't come down as much on the side, which for me personally docks it a little bit. Like, I'd rather use something like this that has that really nice taper. Either of the 3 last brushes, I just feel like has a really nice taper to the sides, and I feel like that helps you when you're blending to really get all the edges of your shadow and really diffuse it, whereas this brush is a little more cut straight across. So I don't know, I just feel like it hinders it a little bit in helping really diffuse those edges, at least in my personal opinion. I like a more rounded and tapered edge to my eyeshadow brushes. But it's not a terrible brush, I still do use it, but it is one of those brushes that I feel like out of all the fluffy blending brushes that she included in this collection, this is kind of my least favorite. It gets the job done, it's still nice and soft, it still diffuses nicely, but it's just one that I don't reach for as much because of that cut being not as tapered on the sides as I personally like to have it. And the very last step is a brush number 8. This is a Prepping Perfector. This is placing and setting your base. And this is the one brush I feel like I have no purpose for. Now, if you're someone who always has to set your eyeshadow primer or concealer with a skin tone or your face powder or something before you do your eye makeup, I can see you getting a lot of good use out of it because that is what this brush is intended for. But for me, I'm someone who doesn't set my base. I like my base to be nice and tacky because I feel like it just helps the eyeshadows perform their best. So for me, I didn't really have a purpose for this because there was no eyeshadow I ever wanted to put on my eyelid that was this big and needed to be this diffused and messy, like a, you know, a setting your base or something like that. So that's the main reason this is a brush that I'll probably be decluttering soon out of my collection, just because it serves no purpose for me. I did try to use this to blend out my concealer on my lid, but it just doesn't work for that purpose, probably because it is so fluffy. I don't know. It was just too hard. It was making my concealer just streak everywhere instead of really blending it and buffing it out into my skin. So would not recommend it for that. Something I did notice too with using it is that kind of the same story as that last brush we just talked about, where it's just not tapered very nicely on the side, or not tapered enough for my liking. This is kind of the same story, because the brush, while it's nice and rounded here, it's pinched at the ferrule, the taper on the side stops about here. So it's just, I wish it would go a little bit farther, because then I feel like you could use it for more purposes and it would just blend out your shadows a little bit nicer, or whatever powder you're using it for. With it being so sharp of an end to that taper, I just felt like when I was using it on my eye, I felt kind of like I was stabbing myself with it, so it wasn't the most pleasant of experiences. And again, I was trying to use it to blend out concealer, so maybe you wouldn't really notice that if you're using it as a powder just to set your concealer or your eyeshadow primer, but it's something I figured would be worth noting. I only tried to use this twice, neither time worked, so I don't have a ton of experience with this brush, but I did want to give you my review of it. And for me personally, and how I like to do my eyeshadow, this is the one dud out of the whole brush collection for me. So there you have it. Those are the 8 brushes in this collection. I overall am really happy with this brush collection. For $4, even with this one dud that, like I said, I'll probably end up decluttering, that still gives me 7 brushes for around $33 if you use Molly's code, which I would totally recommend using a code if you can get it cheaper. Why not? And I think it's awesome that they let that discount code apply to her collab. I did want to say that this is not a permanent collection to Doll 10. I don't know when it's going to be disappearing, but I think Molly said it's for sure will at least be through to the end of the year, but she's not, like, she couldn't tell me much after that. So if you're interested in it, maybe look at, you know, purchasing it sooner rather than later, because I have no idea when it's just going to be discontinued and done for. But yeah, congratulations, Molly, on putting this brush collection together. Okay, my camera card filled up, so I kind of lost track of where I am, but hopefully I can record this before it fills up again. I just deleted one clip. But anyway, overall, I'm very, very happy for Molly. I'm very impressed with the variety of brushes she included, and just the care that I could tell she took in picking out these brushes. She just didn't throw a bunch of random brushes together or include a lot of those useless brushes. For me personally, like, I feel like we all have a million of those double-sided spoolie and liner brushes in our collection, because they're always included in brush collections. So I appreciate that she put so many blending brushes, and for me being a blending brush fanatic, I love my blending brushes. I love that about this collection. And if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of brushes, maybe you only have 1 or 2, you're just starting out in makeup and wanting to get a collection going for doing your eye makeup, I highly recommend checking this out, because it gives you such a wide variety of different types of blending brushes. I feel like you could buy this and really get a good feel of what type of blending brush you prefer, what type works best for your eyes, what type works best for the type of eye looks you like to go for. It gives you a lot of different brushes to kind of figure that out, which I feel like is a little bit of the journey of getting into makeup and getting into doing your eyes, figuring out what you like to work with best and figuring out what size works best for your eyelid. So yeah, that is the biggest reason that I can recommend this brush set, is just because it gives you such a great start when it comes to your blending brushes. But yeah, overall, I think that is all my thoughts. I hope that this video was informative for you guys. I know it is, as I said, kind of late, and everyone's probably already have their reviews out for this brush collection, but I hope you found it helpful, and, you know, helpful for me to break it down and give you my review and thoughts on each of the brushes. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this brush collection. Have you tried Doll 10 before? Did you buy this brush collection? Definitely, if you're going to buy it, make sure you use Molly's code. I'll have it down in the description box. I think it's MakeupMolly 10, but I'll have it, or 15. I'll have it down in the description box just so I don't misremember it here, but definitely use that code. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye, guys.